I'm Doug Moriarty. I'm one of the guys that tie flies for the shop here at Larry's here at Bennett Springs. One of the flies I tie quite a bit of is a PMD parachute. And so I'm going to show you what materials I use and the techniques that I use to tie that fly for the shop here. And let's get started. Okay, so let's go through what I'm going to be using today. I'm going to be using the Lightning Strike DF1 in a size 16. This is going to be about the biggest hook that I use for this fly. I usually tie these in 16s, 18s, and 20s. So just for the ease of seeing it on the camera and everything today, I'm going to use a size 16. For thread, I'm going to be using the Semperfli classic wax thread in 8/0 and in white. I also am going to be using from Semperfli their poly yarn in a cream. I really like this poly yarn because it has a little bit more stiffness to it for the parapost, which works out. And I tie my paraposts in a little different fashion. I'll show you how that works out. One of the main reasons I do it that way is because it creates a really durable parachute fly. I'm going to be using white superfine dubbing, and I'm going to be using for my tailing material a spade feather from Collins Hackle out in New York. Charlie Collins, a great Catskill tyer himself, and also raised hacklebirds for a long time for tying flies in the Catskill style. And I got a whole bunch of this tailing material from him several years ago, and I really love using it on this fly. So I've already got a fly in the vise. So the next thing, I like to take my thread and I will wax this up a little bit, even though it's a pre-waxed thread. I like to wax my thread because it gives it a little bit more grip. And that's some wax that is custom made that actually I got from the shop here. There's another local fella that makes this stuff up. John is his name, and I love this medium tack wax that he has. It's fantastic for working on these dry flies. So one of the first things I do, and this is a technique that I picked up from Davey McPhail. When I start, a lot of times people don't really know where they want to put their post or how to figure out to orient your post. And so a technique that I picked up from Davey McPhail is start your thread right behind the eye and then wrap it halfway down to the bend and then halfway back. And when you get there, that's going to be the perfect placement for your post. So I'll come in and I'll trim this off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off 1 card width of my post material. Since this is a 16, it's a little smaller, I don't need that much material. So generally what I will do is I will take about half. I will split this material, and a lot of times it splits better if you use a bodkin or the tips of your scissors to do it. So I will take it about half of that material. What I'll do then is I'll take the one end and I'll pinch it off right here, and then I'll tie this end to the shank. I'll use a pinch wrap to get that, and I'll put about 3 or 4 turns on there, and I will lift up and see if that's where I want my post, and that is where I want it. So then I'll come back and I'll take a few more wraps towards the hook bend, and then I'll grab my scissors and I'll come up here, snip this off, I'll lift it there, and I'll cut that at an angle so it gets a little taper to it. That helps build your body taper. And then I will wrap that down. I'll continue back, and I'll wrap that, and I'll come back up. Next, what I'll do is I'll take the fluff off of my spade feather here, and I will grab a good bunch of fibers. And the best way to do this is hold it there, pull these down so that they're perpendicular to the stem. I'll reach in and I'll grab those, and as Charlie Craven says, just pull away those. I'll transfer those to my right hand. I have 2 little fibers not wanting to cooperate. So then I'll come in and I will measure this about a shank length long, and I will come up and I will pinch that. Then what I'll do is I will set that back here, and I will angle that just a little bit towards myself while I bring the thread up, and I catch that and let the thread torque kind of pull it up on top of the hook. Then I'll lift up and pull the tail back towards me so that that thread torque does the same thing. And I will wrap that right back to the bend. Then I'll pull that up, and I'll show you what we'll do a little bit later with that I like to do. What I'll do is I'll run my thumbnail up underneath it, and I'll splay those out. A lot of guys really like to have a perfect looking fly. I like kind of rougher looking flies because trout are a predatory animal, and as most predators, they don't pick on the healthiest. So if they see a fly that looks disheveled in the water and it looks like it's struggling, that's the one that's going to be the easiest for them to take. So if you tie a fly and it looks a little on the ratty side, I don't worry about it. Those generally catch fish pretty well. A lot of times, the more fish you catch on a fly and the rougher it looks, the more it gets eaten. So after tying this in, we'll bring the thread right back up here, and then I'll trim off, slide those scissors up in there and trim off the butts of those pieces of tailing. Then I'll run my thread right up to the back, right where I tied in this post. What I like to do now, well, I've still got 2 more. There we go. What I'll do is I'll take and I'll make 2 posting wraps on this material, and that helps kind of anchor those in. Okay, after I'll do that, and I just lost my posting wraps, so now I'll bring that over and I'll make 1 wrap in front. Now this is where things get a little different and a little interesting. I will take this and I'll pull it up, and if you were to look at it from above, I take it and I twist this clockwise, and I'll twist it up fairly tight, and then I'll reach about midway down and I'll pinch it with my left hand, and I'll pull this down to the shank of the hook, and I'll let go. And if you see, it furls up on itself and it twists on itself. And so then I'll reach down and I'll grip that with my finger and my thumb, and I'll hold this tag end down here on my side of the shank. I'll bring my thread up and with a pinch wrap, I'll stick it behind my thumbnail, and I'll bring it down, and I'll pull it down, and I pull back and towards the rear of the hook, and I'll make 2 wraps like that. And then what I'll do is I'll come up and I will wrap towards the eye of the hook a few turns. I'll lift this front part up, slide in here, and snip that off real close. And then we'll clean that up and wrap that up tight. Now what I do is I'll turn the fly towards me, and I'll check, and I'll pull this straight up, making sure that it's in line with the shaft or the shank of the hook. Now what I do to kind of anchor it in that place is I will come up over this side, around that post back to me, and then I'll come underneath all the way around, and I'll come around that post from this side, go all the way around, and I will do that 2 or 3 times. And what that does is that pulls from each side of there, and it anchors that, and it keeps that post from wanting to slide one way or the other. It keeps it nice and solid. And so once I get done with that, wrapping up your post is really easy. I'll bring it up this side and come around, and wrapping your post is just as simple as that. You don't have to hold it from above. You'll bring it up. Generally, I'm about 10 or 11 wraps up, and then come back down. Once I get all the way to the bottom, I'll bring it behind that post towards the hook bend. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of my dubbing here. Small pinch. And one of the things, this is something that I learned from watching Kelly Gallup videos. A lot of people have a tendency to really overdub flies. So generally my thing is very little dubbing and a nice tight rope on the thread. A lot of guys will say, oh, you taper your noodle, your dubbing noodle. Me, this already has a nice taper to it. The body is already tapered up, so there's no point in trying to make any more taper. So all I need to do is make a very thin noodle on here. And a lot of times it can be so thin that it basically looks like you're just barely covering that thread with a little bit of dubbing, and that is just fine. And so I will generally make a noodle here that's about 2.5 to 3 inches long, because what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to dub the entire fly, not just up to the post. We're going to dub this entire fly with this. And I generally leave a little bit of open thread here, and what I do is I wrap that open thread to the tail, right where the tail starts, and then I dub up. And I come up, and I'm going to back that up. Don't like that. There we go. And so then what I'll do is I'll make a couple of X wraps, and I look and make sure that the dubbing's got my thread covered here. And then I'll run it up towards the hook eye. I'll make a wrap or 2 there, and then I'll work back to that post. And I'll come around, and I will bring my thread to the far side around the post, and then bring it back and hang it and let it hang there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fly, and then I'm going to turn it this way. And then I'm going to grab my whiting hackle feather. And I generally, if I'm tying a lot of these, I really love using saddle because I have been able to at times tie upwards of 10 to 12 flies with one feather on these. And so it makes it very economical to do that. So what I do is I will take the curved side, the concave side, towards the fly, and I will stick this stem right there alongside my post. And I will wrap right up against the body, and I'll take 2 turns right there, and then I'll start working that out. And generally, a lot of times I'll take it sometimes 7 or 8 turns out towards the end, and then I'll make some more open turns coming back, and I'll let my thread hang there. Then I'll grab my feather and I will wrap this hackle. There's 1 turn, 2, 3, and about 4 turns with this hackle. I'll bring my thread up and over once, twice, and then I'll pull the hackle back, and I'll make 1 turn on the other side. Next thing I'll do is I'll come in and I will grab my Tiemco whip finisher. I've got 2 of these. I've got this one and the Midge whip finisher. They're expensive, but they are the best. I love them. What I'll do is I'll come up now and right up on top of that hackle, I'll do a 3-turn whip finish right there on the post. Slide that down and then snug it. Grab my scissors and snip that. I'll snip out my feather. Now, usually there's still a little bit of the stem, and I'll come in, and you probably can't see it right now, it's back here, but I'll snip that out. Now, before I trim anything else on this fly, I'm going to reorient it back to the original position, like so. And from here, if I have some fibers that are sticking up, I'll come in and snip those away. Then what I'll do is I will grab what I've got here is Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, and I will thin this stuff down because I like it really thin, and you'll see why in just a second. Another thing, I really like using water-based head cement, but I will take this and I'll clean off my bodkin first. Sorry about that. I'll put a drop on my bodkin. And generally, I will turn that post back towards me, and I will come in right at the top on those thread wraps at the top of that, and I will put a drop right in there. And the reason I like it thin is because that way it just kind of leaches down through everything. It leaches down in, it gets on the thread, it gets into that post, it gets into the hackle, and it's a really, really strong bond. And the reason I really like doing that is it creates a super, super durable parachute fly. So once I've got my head cement on there, I'll come in here and take a look, and you generally want your post to be about the length of the body. Come in and I'll snip that off right there, and then just kind of fluff it with your finger. One thing, if you're worried about your tail being a little long, don't. For me, with parachute flies especially, I think you're better off having the tail a little long rather than short because it helps to stabilize the fly and keep it upright. Um, Me personally, I generally I'll leave these longer for the shop because some guys really like it to be able to see it a little better. I like trimming them a little shorter because I think it makes it a little less top heavy and a little less apt to fall over. But that's going to be um, the Parachute PMD.